Welcome, everyone. We are a selection of the Scholé Academy middle school humanities teachers. We teach various sections of history and literature to middle school and junior high age kiddos. And we want to provide a little bit of an introduction to some of the key features of our classes and what your students can look forward to this year if they are enrolled with us. My name is Lauren Hartke, and I teach ancient history, classical history, and classical literature. So I teach Curious Historian Level 1, which covers ancient Mesopotamia and the early Bronze Age. So think Sumeria, Babylon, and Egypt, a lot of everybody's favorite things. This is the first section of the Curious Historian book cycle. So if your kiddos are new to those books, this is probably where you want to start. And then after that is level 2, which is classical Greece and Rome. And that is one of my favorite classes to teach. So you can take them in any order, but if you start with ancient Mesopotamia, I recommend going to classical Greece and Rome as well. So, my big thing in my history classes is teaching students to love their historical neighbors. I believe that God's commandment to love your neighbor extends even to people in the past, people who have lived and died thousands and thousands of years ago. So, I really want to teach your students to think of people in the past as human beings created in the image of God, deserving of love and respect, and people who deserve to have their stories told. We learn their stories by reading primary sources, learning to analyze them, and doing our very best, though imperfectly, to learn how they lived their lives. From ancient Egypt to Mesopotamia, all the way to the early Christian age in late imperial Rome. I hope that your students will come along with me for a guided tour of the ancient and classical world. The other class I teach is classical era literature. This class pairs really well with the Greek and Roman history class. And in this class, I provide students with a curated first taste of some of the great classics of the Greco Roman world. We start out with Edith Hamilton's mythology and read a couple of guided selections to kind of get our appetites going for Greek myth. And then we enter the Odyssey. We read Homer's Odyssey together slowly, thoughtfully, and carefully. And then once we're done with the journey of Odysseus, we move on to the Roman sequel of the Aeneid and follow Aeneas on his many journeys. And then we wrap up our books with Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, a retelling of the classical myth of Cupid and Psyche wrapped up in beautiful, Lewis like theme and language. There's beautiful gospel imagery and glimpses, and it's a very compelling and readable way to wrap up the class. So these are sometimes big books that can be a little intimidating, but my hope is to equip students with everything they need to get a first taste of these books with the hopes that they will come back and read them again and again throughout their careers as students and even as adults. So if that's something that interests you, I hope that your students will join me this year.
Hi, I am Sarabeth Sangrey, and I teach American history and American literature for middle schoolers. These two classes can be taken separately, and a number of students do. But when you pair them together, they really help give students a well-rounded picture of American history and philosophy and thought over the past 250 years. In the history class, we have the primary source documents, and so students are hearing firsthand what people were writing and thinking about. And then in the literature class, we get to see the narratives and stories of the everyday American people, how they were living within what was happening historically during that time, what kinds of questions they were asking, what it was actually like being people back then. So, in my history class, we will be reading from Wilfred Maclay's Land of Hope. I'm not sure if this is backwards, but Land of Hope textbook for young readers. And what I really love about Maclay's books are that he really focuses on figuring out the why of why different events happen in history. What were people thinking? What were their worldviews that led them to making the decisions they did? What happened beforehand that really led to all of the events afterwards? One of my favorite ones to think about for this is that the French and Indian War was a huge reason why the American Revolution even happened. And I think a lot of people that can be a surprise to them. So I love finding those little nuggets of history about why things happened the way they did. Also in history class, we'll be reading lots of primary source documents. We'll be doing timelines throughout the year. We'll be doing various mapping projects. I'll be doing history catechism of sorts that help students remember some important facts. And then students will have the opportunity to reflect weekly through short writing assignments on what they're learning. In my literature class, we get to read some of my very favorite stories. A lot of these are stories I grew up reading. Some of them are Newbery Honor books, so they have really good, exceptionally good writing. And so it's just so much fun to me to get to read these books for my work and share my love of them with other students. These are books like Carry On, Mr. Bowditch and Johnny Tremaine and The Witch of Blackbird Pond, The Wednesday Wars. And these will take us from the explorers all the way back in the 1500s up through the 1960s with the Wednesday Wars. In this class as well, students will begin to learn how to write 5-paragraph academic essays, and I'll be coaching them and providing feedback on that throughout the year. So I hope you consider one of these classes if you're interested in your student learning American history or literature. I love my students. It's sad to see them go at the end of the year. And I really want to seek to build a relationship with them because a lot of our classes are having a discussion. We're really trying to dig deep together. So I look forward to seeing what students God brings me this year.
I love that. I wish I could take or sit in on some of those classes. It's all so much fun.
Thank you.
I'm Kat Wise, and I teach classic literature 6. So we basically have kind of two streams of literature courses for this age group. There are the ones that are themed around the time period, and then there are other literature courses roughly built around the study of the virtues. And so either of them are great options. There is some overlap in our book list, so I'll show you a little bit from mine. But in my Classic Literature 6 course, we read through the lens of the virtues and try to incorporate a fair amount of art. So here's an example of an illustration we made about the cardinal virtues. We review these during the first quarter, and then we spend a quarter each on faith, hope, and charity. So this is in our first quarter as we're reviewing. So there's some overlap with Mrs. Sangrey's class, Johnny Tremaine. And then as we discuss faith, we read some of these great classics. Hope, this is a graphic novel version of a Shakespeare story. It's so much fun. We read it as readers' theater. It's delightful. And then, of course, The Hobbit, and then Charity or Love. So we read some real gems. We also have a specific spring focus on poetry, including a March Madness bracket where we select our class's favorite poet and write a lot of our own poetry. And then a fun highlight is our end of book projects where students choose their own creative ways to respond to each book. I actually tried to skip one of these assignments at the end of last year because I felt like the students had enough other work to complete and they revolted. They know, no, we do not. We are doing the end of book project. So we have a great time. It's so much fun. It is a very discussion-based course. And so, we read the books, we respond to the books, then we talk about the books. So it is so much fun. And I love reading alongside so many thoughtful and creative students. And so, of course, I hope that some of your kids will consider joining.
I also wish I could bottle up everything that Mrs. Wise just said and explain it to you, but we have a lot of overlap from what she mentioned. I also teach classical literature 6, and I also teach level 7 as well. And there's a lot of overlap between both of those classes, as well as what Mrs. Wise was just explaining for how she runs level 6. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of slides with just some images of what the students do, and more specifically, the books that we are going to be reading and what this course is about. Because, like Mrs. Weiss says, what we like to focus on in classical literature is the idea that you're responding to the text. So, unlike normal literature classes that you might see in public school or even some brick and mortar private schools where it's like, read a book, now write a book report and write an essay, and it's just about regurgitating what you might know about the class, so just more like comprehension and not actually thinking. We want you to respond to the text and enjoy them. So we look at the 7 virtues that Mrs. Wise had already mentioned in both sections, level 6 and level 7. The difference is just our approach to them. So in level 6, we focus on animals. We do a lot of animal stories from Peter Rabbit to The Tale of Despereaux to Redwall to Urchin of the Riding Stars, but we do throw in 2 human books towards the end, which is Treasure Island and The Sign of the Beaver. These are still some action adventure stories like all of the animal stories we would have read, but it's to kind of transition to talking more about human nature towards the end. Because at first we look at our human natures, the 7 virtues, through animals' eyes. And then we transition to human eyes, so to speak, because that kind of leads into level 7. So in level 7 of this course, we're going to be reading books about people, and it's all action and adventure themes. So we have like Old Yeller and Rascal, The Little Prince, and Pollyanna. And then we also focus on some older texts, so like Robin Hood and Sir Orfeo, and then Tolkien's translation, or I should more specifically say his version of Father Christmas, which we're going to do over the Christmas period, which of course is going to have a ton of fun things in it. So in both classes, like Mrs. Wise also said, we do a lot of fun projects. We have the end of book project where you can choose what you would like to do. These are some samples from other students who've already taken this course, so you can see the different mediums that they all chose to interpret a text that we read. And that's basically what we're doing. We're going to read something and then you're going to show me how you interpret this or what's your creative process about that. And some students have gotten very, very creative by even acting out their end of book project. So they'll pick a scene from the book that we read and then they'll act it out. So these two classmates here acted out the scene in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader where the water comes through, and that's their interpretation of it. And of course, we show it in class, and everybody has a ton of fun laughing with each other and talking about the text. So it's all, again, just more about reading the books and then coming to class and discussing it with us. What did you like? What did you didn't like? And most importantly, what do we see of God's love for us in these texts? So I hope you will enjoy those classes. Sign up for mine, sign up for Mrs. White's. Also, everybody else here as well. They have a ton of good classes, and I hope you enjoy them.